You're now watching Sports Bettor's Paradise on the Bet Rivers Network.
And down the stretch we come here on the college basketball season, our last full week of the regular season. Then we get into the conference tournaments, already getting a little bit of the conference tournament feel this week. But let's get right to it. Let's start off with the first game on the board tonight, Paul, and let's go to the SEC. And look at South Carolina, South Carolina back-to-back home victories by double digits. Never in doubt. I think 18-2 was the first score. Excellent job on our 5-1 weekend on this past Friday through Sunday, Paul. So, again, we're doing two of these podcasts weekly on a Tuesday and then on a Friday. South Carolina is catching 1.5 against Georgia. Again, not only have they won those last two SEC games, they're only two SEC wins, but at home, 7-0 against the spread at home. If you go back to all of the games, when they lost their first one bad against Alabama, but they have played close. You talk about it's kind of one of those sneaky teams home and away. There's some of them that know about it, but they have been a covering machine. And then Georgia, I like this spot. I mean, you talk about their best win of the season. They follow it off with their best road win of the season. I know it's a sinking ship in Austin, Texas, but, man, that's two teams on the bubble, and they just smashed them in, never looked back. I mean, that thing was double digits, gate to wire, pretty much. Maybe a little exhale spot, a sleepy exhale spot down the road to Columbia, South Carolina. Carolina at Bet Rivers right now catching 1.5, Paul.
Yeah, Jimmy. I mean, I echo your sentiments almost exactly. It looks like you stole my notes here. So
plagiarism, Paul.
South Carolina still obviously bringing up the rear at 2-14 in the SEC, but man, they're playing better, and they are a different club at home, as you pointed out. Tonight, again, the Gamecocks playing a Georgia team off back-to-back wins, as you mentioned, over a highly ranked Florida team. Then they back that up with the win over Texas there in Austin. So they're now the Bulldogs, in my opinion anyway, squarely in the NCAA tournament at-large conversation. And while, some might consider a Georgia team, firmly on the bubble to be the more motivated team in this matchup, I think certainly there's pressure associated with the need to win. So they've got that little bit of a burden. And as you mentioned, South Carolina, those last two home victories, they're two conference victories over Texas and Arkansas by a total of 34 points. This is a Georgia team that has similar talent, I think, to those two teams. As you mentioned, last seven home games, either 6-0-1 or 7 straight covers. So the Gamecocks have been good at home. Colin Murray Boyles, he'll be a lottery pick. He's South Carolina's top player, top rebounder, top scorer, 16.8 points per game, 8.4 rebounds. I like South Carolina plus the 1.5 to beat Georgia tonight in Columbia.
Earn a chance at $10,000 in bonus credits with Bet Rivers Prop Packs. Place NBA same-game parlays to collect player card prop packs and earn rewards. You win based on how your player performs. Log into BetRivers.com with the Bet Rivers app to place your bet and get your pack right now available at Bet Rivers. Talk about teams. One of my handicapping angles is I like to take teams that are performing at a higher level than their overall resume. And maybe fade a team that's playing below their overall resume. And one clear team is the Indiana Hoosiers right now. And it's funny that, but they're playing really good. And so is Oregon. Oregon's won 5 in a row right after they dropped 5 in a row. So, I mean, they're on the right side of that roller coaster. We've seen Dana Altman do this for so many years at so many places. So he's highly respected. So they're right where they are. And they've always been safely in because they have so many. They won that Vegas tournament with so many key big wins on a neutral surface. But Indiana's now won 4 of 5. Before that, close losses to Maryland on Super Bowl Sunday by 1 point. They hit a 3 to beat them. They were up 2 late in that game. Michigan, a close win. And one of their best performances, a Friday night in West Lafayette at Mackey Arena against Purdue. That was a tough loss. They were winning deep into that game. My point is, since Woodson's been announced it's over, guess what? He doesn't have to recruit anymore his roster. He doesn't care if they leave and all go to 12 different colleges next year. He can just coach. This is a different team because of it. We've heard a lot of them. Every coach I talk to, man, I'm a fundraiser now. I'm a recruiter 24/7, 365. I just want to coach. And you're seeing more and more of the trends, like Oklahoma just hired Jim Nagy in football, for the Senior Bowl. Lombardi's at Belichick running interference for him in Chapel Hill. Just some of these GMs that are being, this new position in college athletics. Mike Woodson is just coaching now, and the team is responding. I think this is I've seen lesser talented teams going into Eugene and fall within this 6.5 number. I'm taking a Hoosiers plus 6.5 on the road against Oregon. They're playing better, Paul.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Oregon, first of all, they've been an enigma. They've kind of played below, I think, their expectations and their potential most of the year. But Dana Altman, as you mentioned, man, he's kind of like Tom Izzo. He's got some of that March magic, and it's that time of the year. So they've now won 5 straight, as I think you pointed out as well. Indiana's been fairly solid at the on the road for the most part this year. You mentioned they're a different team since it was announced Mike Woodson would not be returning to the bench next year for the Hoosiers. They've actually won their last 2 road games at, I believe, Wisconsin or Washington, and
the
then
hottest team
Michigan State.
Yeah, at Michigan State. Yeah,
And that's the last game Sparty lost. I think they won that game at Indiana 71-67. That's a big-time victory there. So I think they're playing loose. Like you said, not as much burden perhaps on their shoulders. And I like the dog here as well. Not a play for me yet, but I certainly side with your position there.
And played themselves onto the tournament all of a sudden. And we were monitoring them at first and kind of just it wasn't quite there. And now they are. They went to that zone against Michigan State as well in Sparty. So they're going a little bit smaller in their rotation as well. All right, Mississippi State and Texas. So I remember Cotton Bowl, Mississippi State and Texas. I think Ricky Williams ran all over the Dogs that day in Dallas. But anyway, you talk about teams and not performing. This has been sort of an underperforming season for the Texas Longhorns. You got 3 coaches I think are really close on the bubble that they might have to get into the tournament or they might be done. Texas, Georgia, and also who am I forgetting in the SEC? But anyway, the Mississippi State, ho-hum win against LSU. LSU actually executed better, reducing their turnovers and also the amount of offensive rebounds that they allowed their opponent. But Texas seems to be like it's kind of a sinking ship right now. They've lost 6 of 7. The one that they won, they stole that one against Kentucky when Lamont Butler was absent for that game. They were losing for most of it. But Texas and then on Saturday at Georgia, just housed from start to finish, Paul.
Yeah, that football game that you mentioned, Mississippi State and Texas in the Cotton Bowl, January 1st, 1999. I think Ricky Williams was just off his Heisman Trophy winning season, and my wife, Abby, she was then my girlfriend. We got married a year later. We drove up and walked into the game, and those cowbells, she has not liked those cowbells ever since January 1st, 1999. This is certainly more of a play against Texas than it is a play on Mississippi State. Rodney Terry and the Longhorns, they just seem to be in a end-of-season free fall, if you will. They've lost 6 of their last 7 games. 4 of those losses have been as the betting favorite. They have 7 straight non-covers. Their lone victory during this recent downturn was over a depleted Kentucky team that was down 2 starters, including their very important point guard, Lamont Butler. So Texas just hadn't been playing very well. You got to wonder how much gas has left in the tank for a floundering Texas team. To me, it's just a shame that outside of an improbable run through the SEC tournament, fans are not going to get to see Texas true freshman Trey Johnson in the NCAA tournament. This is a guy that averages almost 21 points a game. He is an offensive, just one of the better offensive players in college basketball, no question about it. He just creates so well, but likely not going to see him in the tournament because the Longhorns not going to be there. I like Mississippi State minus 7.5 over Texas tonight in Starkville.
Had 39 in that game at Fayetteville, that close loss.
Yeah.
Yes. Outstanding player. There's no doubt about that. Let's move on to the Atlantic Coast Conference. And how about these? This is similar runs right now. Florida State in Virginia. Virginia and Charlottesville at home, 4.5-point favorites at Bet Rivers over the Seminoles of Florida State. Well, the coaching, but the ACC coaches are quitting left and right. Virginia, Tony Bennett, he quit before the season started. And Florida State's Leonard Hamilton, after a really good run when the ACC was much stronger, really kind of an unsung. He did a lot, man, at Florida State. Never got to a Final Four, but a lot of Sweet 16s and a lot of wins against some really good teams. And Virginia has lost 4 of 7, with their losses coming to Duke, North Carolina, and Clemson. Florida State has lost 3 of 7, with their losses to Duke, North Carolina, Clemson, and Louisville. Similar, right? Well, look a little bit deeper, and you look at the last 3 games. Florida State has given up an average of 95 points a game. And the one that really sticks out to me is that Monday night game against North Carolina, where Florida State shot 54% from the floor. That's really good. 50% from 3. That's probably even better. And then 75% from the free throw line. That's good. And lost by 11 at home. They are checked out on the defensive end of the floor. Virginia, even though Bennett's not there anymore, they still like to defend. Man, they were in control on Saturday against Clemson, and that thing just slipped away from them. The final score is not indicative of how close that game was, but there you go. But I think Virginia here, just a team that is still grinding a little bit more, a lot more than Florida State. I think it's a cheap number at home. Give me the Cavaliers minus 4.5 against the Noles.
Yeah, this was a game I had circled as well, looking at the Virginia side. You know, my power ratings and some other power ratings that I reference kind of had Virginia a little bit lower, like minus 2.5 or minus 3. But Florida State, just saw this before we came on. Florida State's forward, one of their top players, Malik Ewan, he's got an ankle injury. He didn't play in that loss to Duke in their most recent game. 14 points a game, leads the team in rebounds, almost 8 rebounds a game. So my expectation would be that he might be out again tonight against Virginia. But again, I don't have action on it yet, but I think you're on the right trail there back in the Cavaliers tonight over the Seminoles.
I mean, that's hard to do, huh, Paul? I mean, 54% from the floor, 50% from 3, 75% from the line, and lose by double digits at home. The other coach I was trying to think about was Porter Moser at Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. This is 4th year in Norman and no trips to the tournament. So, I mean, all of these teams right on the bubble in Georgia, Texas, and Oklahoma. So we will see. They certainly have more opportunities for quad 1 wins as we finish out the season this week, and then the SEC tournament in Nashville. Let's look at our last game tonight, and let's go to the Big 12. Used to be the Mountain West, and well, it's that mountain trip, and I'm kind of sniffing what you're selling over here right now, Paul. Paul, you're looking at the Utes minus 3.5 against West Virginia. West Virginia, where were they Saturday? They were in Provo, Utah. Where are they tonight? They'll be in Salt Lake City. That mountain swing has been tough on these Big 12 teams first time through this mountain swing at these new participants in the Big 12.
Yeah, we talk often, looking at it from Utah's perspective, we talk often about the home-road dichotomy in college basketball, and Utah is certainly one of those teams that is an entirely different animal, if you will, on its home floor. The Utes, 15-3 this season at the Huntsman Center. Their losses at home to some pretty good basketball teams. St. Mary's, pretty good. Texas Tech's pretty good. And Baylor, not one of their better teams, but they're still not an easy out. Utah, they've covered 7 of their last 8 home games. West Virginia, they actually won the first meeting between these teams, 72-61, back on February 8th as a 7-point home favorite. In that game, Utah only hit 6 of 23 from three-point territory. They shoot the three-pointer, as you might expect, a little bit better at home, almost 36% from three-point territory on their home floor. I think Utah is going to win this game by more than 3.5 points, maybe a half dozen or more. I like Utah minus 3.5 tonight over West Virginia in Salt Lake.
Before we move on to the Wednesday games, one game we gave a lot of consideration. We talk about home and away. We talk about the mountains as well. BYU has always been some big splits home and away. So the Iowa State Cyclones. They've always been really good at home. And they've been one of the top teams, and the only teams that have been better at home are just the elite teams, elite talented teams, that have good home court advantages. But Ames, Iowa has been as much of an increase in their, the team's advantage at home as opposed to the road. And then BYU, the same. That's a big number. I saw that thing splitting a lot, but a lot of consideration by both efforts for the Iowa State-BYU game because BYU's playing at a high level, but it's an intriguing matchup tonight in Ames between BYU is hot right now, but home and away splits are drastic, and that's a tough place to go to.
It's an extremely tough place to go to. I mean, I think one of the more underrated home court advantages in all of college basketball is Iowa State playing at Hilton Coliseum. And if people are not familiar with Iowa State's fan following, man, they have got some loyal fans, especially in basketball. They populate that Big 12 tournament pretty heavily. So they are underrated, the kind of support they have. And Cyclones really good at home. BYU's playing well on the road now as well. Their last 5 games, half dozen games, they've really been good. Wanted to play and recommend Iowa State here. I think the number's up to 9.5 though at Bet Rivers, so just a little bit too high of a number for my taste. But man, I think Iowa State's probably going to get them by double digits tonight.
All right, let's look at the Wednesday games and start off one in the Big East. And UConn at home is -2 at Bet Rivers right now against Marquette. To me, in my opinion, these are. I know where they are as far as the NET, the bracketology, the KenPom. Marquette has had a better season. They had a much better start. They have just kind of flattened out to me, though. I just haven't seen a ton of improvement from December to January to February, now in March. UConn certainly is not at the level they've been the past couple of years. I mean, those are legendary teams. What they did in the tournament the last 2 years is pretty damn impressive. Hurley's a nut job, I understand, but I mean, he is a damn good coach, and they've been choppy in their improvement. They kind of hit a good one. That win at Creighton was good, but that was a great, it was a great night, a special night by the freshmen. But I just think at home that right now these teams are kind of even. Who would you fear more? If you're playing in the tournament and say you're at like a 2 seed or a 3 seed and you see Marquette or UConn, I'm not so sure you wouldn't rather play Marquette. My point is it's come see, come saw. Okay, they're really, really close. At home, short number because based overall resume is better by Marquette. But right now, I think these teams are really close. Now, I still think that UConn may be the hungrier team at this point. I'm going to take UConn minus a really short number at -2.
Yeah, I think you're getting them at kind of a buy low spot here for sure. The relative struggles of the 2-time defending champion UConn Huskies have been well chronicled. They've only covered 4 of their last 15 games. Otherwise, this line would be higher than just 2 points. One thing about this game that's kind of intriguing to me is the fact that UConn did win at Marquette earlier this year, defeated Marquette 77-69 as a 7-point road underdog back on February 1st. So I don't have any interest really personally in backing either team, but I do agree with your opinion that when it gets to be tournament time, even though UConn's kind of been choppy in their performance, I don't think anybody will be lining up to play Dan Hurley and the 2-time defending national champions.
All right. This is a team that your next pick, Paul, is in the Big 12, and this is a team that I've been calling for as to try and get on the bubble. Well, the bracketologists have conceded. They have added Cincinnati to their bubble team. They have been a profitable team as of late. Yes, indeed. They have 8 straight covers if you had the 1.5 against Baylor. And I'll remind you, I'll take this opportunity at Bet Rivers. Bet Rivers is one of the few. This is mine. This is not Paul's. But if it's on a 0.5 point, this deep in the season, these lines are so tight that if it's on a 0.5, Bet Rivers is one of the few operators, if not the only one in your state, to offer to buy onto the whole point for 8 to 10 cents. So not 15 cents at some places, not at all at a lot of places. So I highly suggest it this time of the year for those numbers that are lower, say 6, 8 or under, either catching or laying points. Cincinnati 6-point favorites right now at the Bet Rivers against Kansas State. Cincinnati, their NET, that's the metric that the committee uses. And they're at number 40 in the 40s on bubble territory. They're right there. They've been very profitable for me. Now, one of those were very fortunate cover at West Virginia, that wild comeback, that cover against the Mountaineers. But anyway, they're really, really on a roll right now. 8 straight ATS if you had 1.5 in the Baylor game against Kansas State, who was on that roll, one of the hottest teams, and we got on them when they had that 6-game winning streak, but they've lost 4 or 5 now, Paul.
Yeah, you mentioned that 6-game winning streak by Kansas State, 4 of those wins against ranked opponents, but Kansas State obviously has slipped somewhat down the stretch. As you mentioned, they've lost 4 of their last 5 games, and I think particularly significant is the fact that their past 3 games have been without their very talented 6'3" senior center, Coleman Hawkins. He's a guy who contributes in many statistical areas. He averages 10.7 points per game, but also contributes 6.7 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 2 steals a game, and 1.3 blocks. So he's a jack of all trades. He's been hobbled by a knee injury. His status for Wednesday's game at Cincinnati is unclear right now. But kind of my expectation in these situations, unless we hear something differently, or some information comes out, that he's going to play, I always expect for that player to be out. So my expectation is Hawkins probably going to be out a little bit longer. Kansas State, they won the season's first meeting between these teams 70-67 in Manhattan back on December 30th. And in that game, Hawkins had a double-double, 20 points and 10 rebounds, also had 4 steals and 3 assists. So if he's not on the floor for the Wildcats there in Cincinnati on Wednesday, it will certainly be a blow to their chances. And you talked about Cincinnati getting into the NCAA tournament conversation, got off to a 2-8 start in Big 12 play, but the last 8 games, you mentioned their point spread performance, they've been really good. I like Cincinnati minus the projected 6 points over Kansas State.
All right, let's move on to the Atlantic Coast Conference, and it's been a tough year for North Carolina State. They've lost 12 of 14 right now, this deep in the season as well. It's been a tough one. Pitt, on the other hand, this is the more desperate team. They're trying to fight their way back onto the bubble. They played really well on Saturday. Say what? They didn't even cover the 10.5. They lost by 11 at Louisville. Well, it's not just the end of the game. Any points you score at any point in the game, they count. In the last 6.5 minutes or 7 minutes to 2 minutes of the first half, a transfer by the name of Chucky Hepburn took, in that 5-minute span, took all 6 of Louisville's shots. He took all 6 from three-point range. He made all 6. He finished for the game 6 for 6 from three-point range. One of the oddest things I've ever seen in my life. And I mean, they were bombs, man. It was a heat check. He had that place going bananas. That's 18 points, and Pitt was still right there deep into the game. Pitt is trying to fight back, and they probably lost their bid. They're at large chances the last couple of weeks with some bad losses. A couple really bad at home. Georgia Tech was a really bad one at the Peterson Event Center. But this is a more desperate team on the road, so it's a cheaper number when you say playing on the road. This is not going to be a true home court advantage for NC State. This is not a traditional ACC rival that comes in. This is Pitt, ACC newbie coming over from the Big East. So it's just kind of they're just finishing out the season at NC State. So I've seen tougher environments in Raleigh. There's no doubt. I think it's a cheap number, a team that should have covered. Maybe this line would be a little bit more had they covered, which they should have at Louisville. That's a much tougher team to play right now, in a much tougher place to play right now. If they play anything close to what they did on Saturday, they'll be fine here, minus the 3.5.
Yeah, we sometimes talk about betting against certain teams, and I certainly can't fault a man for fading North Carolina State. You outlined and mentioned their recent woes: 4-14 in the ACC overall, 3-14 in their last 17 games. It's just really difficult to remember. Of course, they came out of nowhere last year, but this was a team that made the Final Four last year, and I don't think DJ Burns is going to be walking through that door to face the Pitt Panthers on Wednesday. So certainly can't fault your strategy, probably at least partially, of fading NC State. Pitt's probably going to get a road win there in Raleigh.
There is, Nick Saban told us one time at a press conference, he says, I don't want to be a good team. I want to be a good program. Guess what? Those days are over. I mean, Florida State could go undefeated in a Power Four conference in football and be horrendous the next year. NC State, the Final Four one. It is year to year. There is no doubt about that. Let's wind up the handicapping for this Wednesday podcast, and let's go to Central Florida and Oklahoma State. Boy, Oklahoma State had a wild couple of games. Lost by 38, won. I think it might have been by double digits as a double-digit dog, but they won the game outright, did Oklahoma State. Now they'll travel to Orlando to take on 14-15 Pokes against the 15-14 Golden Knights in Orlando. You're looking at the total here, Paul. We're looking at projecting about 162.
Yeah, Jimmy, when you're handicapping a total, certainly one of the items you're trying to project is pace of play, and most specifically number of shot attempts. You look at the first meeting between these schools in Stillwater 2 weeks ago. It was a score fest, won by Oklahoma State 104-95. In that game, had a total combined 133 field goal attempts. 51 of those were three-point attempts, 73 free throws. Neither team even shot 50% from the field. They combined to only hit 27% of their three-pointers, yet they scored 199 points total. So not like they were hitting, everything they threw up. So that kind of, gave me a little reason to look a little bit deeper at this one. Certainly not expecting them to again score a total of 199 points on Wednesday, but I do again expect pace and points. UCF, they rank 14th in tempo at Ken Palm. Oklahoma State, not far behind, at 21st in tempo. Got a UCF team that averages a total of 63 field goal attempts per game. That's 16th nationally in terms of number of field goal attempts. Oklahoma State, not far behind, at 57 field goal attempts. These teams combined to shoot 47 free throws a game, a lot of free throws. Both teams play fast. They shoot a lot. They foul a lot. I like the over projected total of 162.
All right. Hey, don't forget later in the week, this is the last full Saturday of the college basketball season. We get a conference tournament, deeper into conference tournament action this week. So for the big boys, this is the last full Saturday. We'll have a podcast that'll drop Thursday night to Friday morning for all of those games. For Paul Stone, I'm Jimmy Ott here on the Bet Rivers Network of the Sports Bettor's Paradise. We'll see you later this week.